In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Merciful. So, Master's Day of Judgment in which we now live, the alone do we serve, and the alone seek for thine help and aid. O Allah, please guide us on the right path of those upon whom thou hast bestowed thy favors, not on the path of those upon whom thy wrath is brought down, nor those who go astray after they heard thy teachings. Say he, Allah is one God. Allah is he of whom nothing is independent, but upon whom we all depend. He begetteth not, nor is he begotten, there is none like him. And I bear witness that none is to be served worth to praise besides Allah, who came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad. And I bear witness that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is thy true servant and last apostle. Ameen. We'd like to acknowledge the brothers and sisters that extended us the greetings of Assalamu Alaikum. We have Brother Minister Isaac Muhammad from New York. We have Sister Zakiya Kareem. And we have Brother Minister Khalil Muhammad from Florida. And I'd like to say in the name of Allah, who came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, and in the name of his last and greatest messenger, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, I'd like to greet the brothers and sisters with the Nation of Islam's greeting words of peace of Assalamu Alaikum. And today we want to talk about the October 3rd, 1969 Muhammad Speaks, and the title is The Time Must Be Considered. And we want to talk about the center page. And the center page title is called The White Man and the Hypocrites Love Malcolm. Yes, sir. And this article was written by Secretary John Ali. Okay. Now this article right here is this title standard still holds today. That's right. It still holds today. This title is how you judge brothers, especially the brothers who was in the nation during the time of the message. Yes, sir. To remember that the white man and the hypocrites love Malcolm. That's right. Because you got two histories of Malcolm. You got oral history and you got documented history. Yes, sir. Most of the time when brothers talk about Malcolm, they talk about oral history. Yeah. Because that's your opinion. That's what you think about Malcolm. Right. So they give the oral history. And most of the oral history is coming from brothers from New York. The oral history. When you listen to any documentary on Malcolm, he got the one called Make It Plain, Brother Malcolm, all them documentaries, every Muslim they talk to was Muslims who was in New York. They don't talk about Muslims in Cleveland. They don't talk to Muslims that was in Atlanta. They don't talk to Muslims who was in Detroit, Muslims who was in Los Angeles. They just talk to Muslims who was in New York. Okay. And we got to understand about the oral history from a Muslim who was in New York. Malcolm put Islam on the map for New York. Okay. So their oral history going to be different. And when they give their oral history, they talk for the whole country when it's concerning Malcolm. But Malcolm, like if we use Detroit for an example, Malcolm didn't put Islam on the map in Detroit. Yes, sir. Islam was on the map in Detroit from Allah and the Messenger. That's right. The stuff that Malcolm was doing in New York in the 60s, the Messenger and the Muslims was doing in Detroit in the 30s. All right. Just like how you talk about them brothers in New York went to the police station for the brother, I forget his name, but it was in 1957. Malcolm and them brothers went to the police station. They did that in Detroit in 1934. That's right. 500 Muslims went to the Detroit police station to get some brothers out of jail who was with the University of Islam. So when them brothers in New York talk that history about Malcolm, they don't know about the history in Detroit. Yes, sir. And if you listen to the laborers meeting, the messenger was talking about hypocrites. Yes. And he was telling the believers, go talk to the older ones. That's right. That's right. Ain't no older ones in New York. Right, yeah. History wasn't started in New York when the messenger was talking about talk to them older ones. Right. It wasn't in New York. So their oral history gonna be different because brothers in this temple in Detroit knew Muslims who saw the Savior. Right. They didn't have that kind of history in New York. Right. That's just the facts. That's right. When the messenger was on the run, wasn't no temple in New York. It was temples in Detroit. It was a temple in Chicago. It was a temple in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
It was a temple in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Wasn't no temple in New York.
Okay.
So when you get the oral history from them brothers in New York, no disrespect to them. We ain't trying to disrespect them brothers.
That's right.
But their perspective different.
Mm-hmm.
That's why them brothers from New York say Malcolm was the best minister the messenger had. It's a lie. But that's their oral history from New York.
Right.
Because they telling it from the perspective of Muslims in New York. Mm-hmm. Malcolm put Islam on the map in New York. Mm-hmm. But what did the messenger say about Malcolm? Did the messenger say that Malcolm was the best minister he had? This comes from the September 5th, 1964 Pittsburgh Carrier. The messenger calls, the title of the article is, calls Malcolm X greatest hypocrite he's ever seen.
Yes, sir.
Messenger ain't say that Malcolm was the best minister he had.
That's right.
That's that oral history out of New York.
Right.
That's what them brothers say.
Right.
They say that Malcolm X was the best minister because you got to remember, Secretary John Ali says the white man and the hypocrites love Malcolm.
That's right.
That was the standard when the messenger was alive. Mm-hmm. The white man and the hypocrites love Malcolm.
That's right.
So when you listen to this oral history, you got to remember the standard that the Muslims set when the messenger was alive. Mm-hmm. When you hear brothers say Malcolm was the best minister that the messenger had, they talk about all the good he did. He was a good minister and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
You got to remember about what you read about what the messenger said about Malcolm.
That's right.
Because when the messenger was alive, he had calls Malcolm X greatest hypocrite he ever seen.
Right.
Then in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper, you had Minister Lewis X from Boston. Mm-hmm. Because what you got to remember, you writing your book.
That's right. That's right.
You might think the things you saying, because it was so long ago, nobody know it no more.
Right.
But it's documented history about the stuff them brothers were saying about Malcolm X.
That's right. That's right.
Them Muslims was different than us. I'm going to just keep it real. Because we going to talk about this history.
That's right.
Because the history was in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper, and the history was documented in newspapers outside of the nation.
That's right.
So we can play these games and this new school stuff talking about, oh, it was ministers who were jealous of Malcolm. Muslims wasn't saying that. We say, oh, the government killed Malcolm.
Right.
Muslims wasn't saying that. You show me one Muhammad Speaks newspaper where some Muslims said the government killed Malcolm. Show me one. One. Muslims wasn't saying that. Go listen to, it was when Louis Farrakhan was talking to Malcolm's daughter, his older daughter. Because the younger daughters don't remember seeing Malcolm get killed by whoever came in the temple. But she remembered. She said, because Louis Farrakhan was with the brother Malcolm stuff. Talking about how, we don't know what's going on. We want to see the records and the files and FBI files because the government killed Malcolm. She was like, no. She said, I remember what Muslims used to tell me. She said they used to tell me after Malcolm was killed. That no good hypocrite got what he deserved. Praise be to Allah.
That's right.
That's what Muslims were saying.
That's right.
Now, I don't want to give nobody the misimpression because Malcolm is a touchy subject. Because we different.
We are. Yes, sir.
We different than Muslims was then. I mean, you just got to keep it real. Because I'm one of the brothers that love the history.
Right. Yes, sir.
I read what them brothers used to say about Malcolm. I listened to them lectures. I done read these newspaper articles about Malcolm. I done heard what the messenger said. We different. I'm just going to say that. We different than what they was. So I'm not saying that the messenger told Muslims to kill Malcolm. I'm not saying that Muslims actually killed Malcolm. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying, Muslims didn't care what happened to Malcolm. Muslims said that Malcolm was worthy of death.
That's right.
That's what they were saying.
That's right.
We can't hide this history.
That's right.
It's documented history about what brothers you say about Malcolm.
That's right.
It's documented history what FOI and Malcolm X's followers were doing. And we're going to get into that history.
Yes, sir.
Because it's documented.
Right.
Now, the messenger calls Malcolm the greatest hypocrite he ever seen.
Yes, sir. That's right.
And in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper, December 4th, 1964, Minister Lewis X of Boston, because this was before he became the national representative. This was when he was still in Boston. Because Brother James Shabazz was the one who was over the Temple number 7 in New York.
Yes, sir.
When Malcolm X flipped. He was the first minister the messenger sent over there. Was James Shabazz. So Lewis X of Boston wasn't the national representative at this time.
That's right.
He was still Lewis X of Boston. But his articles on Malcolm was the best articles against Malcolm. Because he used to talk about what Malcolm X was doing play by play.
Okay.
Everything Malcolm was doing, he was telling the Muslim perspective on what he was doing.
Yes, sir.
And he was relating it to hypocrites in the Holy Quran and hypocrites in the Bible.
Yes, sir.
That's what he was doing.
Yes, sir.
It's
That's right.
documented.
Right.
Because they wasn't talking about Malcolm X like he was some brother who brothers just got jealous of him and he just left and all of that like we talk now. They was referring to him as a hypocrite.
That's right.
That's how they talked about him.
That's right.
As a hypocrite.
That's right.
They talked about how Allah hates the hypocrites.
That's right.
The messenger used to write articles on the hypocrites.
That's right.
Plenty articles on the
Right.
hypocrites.
That's right.
Those articles that we read in the message to the black man on the hypocrites, them articles come mostly from this Muhammad Speaks newspaper right here. When it talks about the victory of the apostle,
That's right.
send the message to the black man.
Yes, sir.
From this one. This that Muhammad Speaks newspaper that got Malcolm's head rolling in the street.
Yes, sir.
This one is that Muhammad Speaks newspaper where the messenger went to New York because the messenger and Malcolm and them followers were going back and forth. I'm just going to say we different.
Yes, sir.
We different kind of Muslims. I'm going to just say that.
Yeah.
Because I don't want nobody calling in talking about that brother shouldn't have said that. I'm going to just say we different.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
Because the history is documented
Document.
about what brothers was doing.
Yes, sir.
So we can play these games all we want to play because the messenger ain't popular no more. That's why Secretary John Ali says the white man and the hypocrites love Malcolm.
That's right. That's right.
The messenger ain't popular no more. So we ain't gonna say Malcolm X's tongue should be cut out his mouth and sent to the doorstep of the messenger. We ain't gonna say that today. They was saying that back then.
Yes, sir.
It's documented.
Yes, sir. That's right.
We ain't gonna say Malcolm was worthy of death. We ain't gonna say that. Because the white man and the hypocrites love Malcolm.
That's right. That's right. He did. That's right.
And you look at all these splinter groups. You look at all these so-called Nation of Islam groups that's headed by these people. And you remember, the white man and the hypocrites love Malcolm.
That's right.
You can go on YouTube right now and listen to all these Muslims talk about Malcolm X. How many of you here say he was worthy of death? How many of them you hear say that he was like Korah? That's what the messenger compared him to. Korah in the Bible, who opposed to Moses. That's what he said. When Malcolm X, he was on, I think it was Mike Wallace who was interviewing him. Malcolm X said that he went to the messenger. He said that he asked the messenger about these women. Because when Malcolm talks about these women, what he says is that Wallace was in prison for not going to war. So Wallace was in prison. He said that Wallace heard rumors that the messenger had these secretaries who was pregnant. Rumors. Now, in Islam, you got to have 4 witnesses to charge a person up for adultery.
That's right.
Ain't no rumors. That's gossip.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
He didn't say that Wallace knew. He said that Wallace heard rumors that the messenger had these sisters and they was pregnant. So he said that Wallace told him on some rumors. So he said that Wallace went to the sister. He didn't go to the messenger. Wallace went to this sister and asked her what it was. She said it was the messengers. So then I guess he come back and tell Malcolm that. So Malcolm say he went to the sister. Asked the sister. Now, you saying, because the messenger, the thing that I love about how he write about these hypocrites, and we going to read that too. He said, we got your name in black and white saying, you believe as the messenger believe. We all say we believe that the messenger is the messenger of Allah.
Right. Yes, sir.
Somebody come tell you the messenger got some baby by some sister. He the messenger.
That's right.
For one, you got to have 4 witnesses. For one.
Mm-hmm.
For 2, he the messenger.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm going to do to him?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm going to do to him? I'm going to go ask somebody to go investigate that? No. You got to have 4 witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
Don't come to me telling me nothing like about that about the messenger.
Right.
If I believe he the messenger.
Right.
Because I know the history of Korah.
Mm-hmm.
Korah tried to challenge Moses.
Mm-hmm.
There was other people who tried to challenge messenger of Allah.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to them? All of them.
Right.
So if I believe that the messenger, I'm not about to oppose him.
That's right.
That ain't my pay grade.
Right.
They got investigators.
Mm-hmm.
If he did that, then you go tell them invest. Why you telling me? I ain't got nothing to do with that.
Right.
If I believe he the messenger.
That's right.
Then you got to have 4 witnesses. You could rest on that. Like, brother, you got to have 4 witnesses before you charge somebody. You got to out if you believe he the messenger.
Right.
But on rumors. So Malcolm said he went to the messenger and asked the messenger about these women. So he said that the messenger told him that he's David of the Bible.
Oh, yeah.
And he told him that he was Abraham and all these other prophets that he named.
Right.
So Malcolm X, being a hypocrite, he know that most black people is Christians and raised in the church.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
They believe that stuff in the Bible where people charge the prophets with filth and indecency.
Mm-hmm.
But we Muslims, we don't believe that about the prophets and the message of Allah.
That's right.
You don't charge them with no filth and indecency.
That's right.
So that's why the messenger said we believe in the truth of the Bible. But we believe that it has been tampered with
That's right.
and must be reinterpreted so the people won't be snared by the falsehoods that's added to it.
That's right.
All praise due to Allah.
That's right.
So when it charges the prophets with filth, that's charges. That's the falsehoods that added to it.
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm knew that.
He's sure. That's right.
He was a minister for the message.
Right.
When he telling you he David, he's saying just like David was accused, I'm going to be accused.
That's right.
That's what he was saying.
That's right. That's
But
right.
Malcolm, being a hypocrite,
Mm-hmm.
he went to the people
Mm-hmm.
and tried to mud wash the message.
That's right.
And you had different kind of Muslims than you got now.
Right.
You got different kind of Muslims.
Yes, sir.
You had the kind of Muslims, if I'm standing next to you, I ain't going to touch you. I ain't going to bother you. But if the wind blow the hat off my head, I'm blaming you. I'm blaming you.
Right.
That's what Malcolm and his people knew about the Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what Malcolm said, because the title of his article is Boston Minister Tells Malcolm Muhammad's Biggest Hypocrite.
Uh-huh.
Saying the same thing the messenger said.
Right. Right.
So, during that time, the Muslims used to tell people that Malcolm wasn't nothing. That's what they used to say. Because all this stuff documented.
Right.
And the way they showed that Malcolm wasn't nothing is they compared that Muslim Mosque Incorporated. But that's what Malcolm tried to build.
Yeah.
A mosque in opposition to the message.
Mm-hmm.
So listen to what Louis X said. This is in this, this comes from, because this article was in the Muhammad Speaks. This Louis X article was the December 4th, 1964 Muhammad Speaks. This is called Malcolm Unsuccessful in Building a Mosque. He says Malcolm found himself unsuccessful in building a mosque in opposition to the beautiful mission and message of Muhammad. When Messenger Muhammad entered New York on June 28, 1964, it was in this Muhammad Speaks newspaper.
Okay.
So it's documented.
Yes, sir. That's right.
And all I'm going to say is Muslims was different.
Uh-huh.
That's all I'm going to say.
Yes.
Muslims was different.
Yes.
So he said, when Messenger Muhammad entered New York on July 28, 1964, though Malcolm tried to prevent his coming by putting out the threat of death against him. That's what Malcolm was doing.
Yeah.
We got the history.
That's right.
We got it from the Muhammad Speaks, and you got other articles writing about the same thing.
Right.
Let's go see what they say.
Yes, sir.
Because we want to just stick to the history. We don't want to be adding nothing to,
That's right.
taking nothing from.
That's right.
And all I'm going to say is Muslims was different.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to keep saying that.
Right.
Muslims was different.
Yes, sir.
This comes from the June 28, 1964 Rochester Democratic and Chronicle. This talking about Malcolm X, or the messenger going to New York.
Okay.
The title of the article is Black Muslims to Meet Today in New York City.
Okay.
It says James X, James Shabazz.
Okay.
He wasn't Shabazz yet. He was still James X.
Yes, sir.
He was the minister in New York when Malcolm flipped the script. So that's what they talking about.
All right.
It says James X, the black Muslim leader of New York and New Jersey, said earlier this week that he had learned an assassination attempt would be made on Elijah Muhammad while he is here for the rally. James X said a telephone caller told him the attempt will be made by followers of Malcolm X, a former black Muslim leader who broke away from the sect to form his own group, the Black Nationalists.
Yeah, that's right.
This is what was going on.
That's what he did.
Because when you listen to this YouTube stuff, people be trying to make you sympathize with Malcolm.
That's right.
But Malcolm and his people was putting out threats against the messenger's life. They don't tell you that.
That's right. That's right.
It's documented though. And it's from the Muhammad speech, and it's from these other newspapers. So this ain't me just talking.
Right.
It's history. So Louis X said, he said, though Malcolm tried to prevent his coming by putting out the threat of death against him, hoping that his threats would keep Muhammad from fulfilling his promise of visiting New York, he showed the wisdom and strategy of the general leading a victorious, brave, and fearless army against the cowardly hypocrite dog Malcolm.
Right.
And we're going to go step by step with this article, and we're going to talk about the history and the Muhammad Speaks newspaper.
Yes, sir.
Now, he said that the messenger was a general of an army.
Right.
He ain't say no deacon board. He ain't say no group.
That's right.
He said army.
That's right.
Let's keep that in mind.
That's right. Yes, sir.
He said the general. Now, this is what he's saying to them old school FOI. We got to keep in mind who he was talking to. He wasn't talking to us kind of Muslims like we is today.
Well,
He was talking to them old school brothers.
yes, sir.
This is the stuff that they were saying to them. He said Malcolm thought that he had mastered or could with his oration New York against the wisdom and cleverness of Muhammad. But he and his followers were so openly defeated and put to flight by Muhammad's intelligent and well-disciplined FOI members.
Okay.
This him talking about. He talking about how Malcolm's people was put to flight, meaning they was running.
Right.
What he talking about? Because the history documented
Right.
about what they was doing. Let's see what he meant when he said that Muhammad's intelligent and well-disciplined members it says, but he and his followers were so openly defeated and put to flight. See what that means. This comes from the June 29, 1964 Alexandria Daily Town Talk. The title of the article says 10,000 Negroes assemble in Harlem to hear leader of black Muslims. We was different then.
That's
I'm going
right.
to keep saying that. We was different.
Right. Right.
It says New York, it says Elijah Muhammad, leader of the black Muslim, preached his message of racial peace through voluntary segregation yesterday before an audience of almost 10,000 Negroes in Harlem. Now the messenger in Malcolm's stomping ground.
Yeah.
Malcolm done threatened the death of the messenger to them old school brothers. Not to us.
Right.
Them old school FOI know that Malcolm and his people, this hypocrite, threatened the life of the messenger.
Right.
Them old school brothers. So it say, but while the message inside the Harlem Armory was peace, there was some fist fighting outside. A young Negro was beaten by black Muslim guards after someone shouted, he is with Malcolm X.
Okay.
That's how the tension was. All they had to say is, he with Malcolm X.
Okay.
That was enough. All the brothers like, where?
Right.
They was different. It says, the Muslim secret police, known as the Fruit of Islam, closed in on him, one woman screamed, "Kill him!" They was different. They was different. It's documented.
Right.
We can't be acting like, oh, well, you know, oh, no. It's documented. This brother talking about it.
Right. Right.
So we can't be acting like all this we want to hide and all that. No, it's documented.
Right.
It says that city police attempt to reach the man, David Westone, 21, of New York. The black Muslim guards formed a corridor around the melee, linking their arms together to form a tight chain. So you got brothers who caught this brother. So you got other FOI who form a chain link around them brothers beating this brother so the police couldn't come and stop.
Right.
It's documented.
Right. That's right.
And he praising it. In the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. He wasn't talking all that Brother Malcolm talk. He wasn't talking all that, oh, it was ministers who were jealous of Malcolm and the government killed him. He wasn't saying that. That's why we got to know we writing our book.
That's right.
When we say we believe in the message.
That's right.
Because these brothers set the standard on what a hypocrite is, what a believer is, and what a believer will do for the message.
That's right.
We can't be acting like with this new school stuff, like, oh, this new school stuff is how it was. And we try to interpret the Nation of Islam back then based on what we doing now. No. Too many people done read this history.
That's right.
Too many people heard what the messengers said. Too many people heard what these national representatives said. All these ministers, all these Muhammad speak, they just supposed to go away? We supposed to act like it don't exist? No. No. Just because the messenger ain't as popular no more as he was then, why Muslims ain't saying what they used to say about Malcolm?
That's right.
He was a hypocrite.
That's right.
Go look at all them videos on YouTube and listen to what Muslims say. These brothers was beating this brother, formed a court for the police. Usually when the police come, brothers disperse. They was different than us. Care nothing about no police. He talking about the messenger.
Yes, sir.
Care nothing about no police. This is between us and Malcolm. This ain't got nothing to do with them. That was old school Islam. Them brothers was police.
Yes, sir.
Said the messenger was the general of an army. That's what they believe. We building a nation. This ain't got nothing to do with the white man.
That's right.
All praise due to Allah. He our hypocrite.
That's right.
He talking about our messenger.
That's right.
It's hypocrite.
That's right.
That was them old school FOI.
Yes, sir.
They ain't like us.
Yeah.
We sympathize for Malcolm X. We talk about how he was the greatest minister for the messenger when the messenger said he was the greatest hypocrite I ever seen.
That's right. That's right. You say it. That's right.
And when you had Lewis X of Boston, who wasn't the national representative then, go read them. That's how you represent the messenger. When you look at listening to these brothers now, they represent themselves.
That's right.
They ain't representing the message.
That's right.
Go listen to how because Lewis X, I'm telling you, I read other brothers' articles, and other brothers did a good job to defend the message.
Right.
I'm not trying to be with this big eye stuff. But the difference between Lewis X's articles, he had a 5-page article, 5 pages in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper, talking about everything that Malcolm was doing. He was talking about hypocrites that was in the Holy Quran that I had never heard of. That's how well he was breaking down play by play them women. He was talking about the mosque he built. He was talking about him talking against the messenger. He was talking about all kind of prophets that I ain't even never heard of.
Right.
That's how well he was talking about Malcolm being a hypocrite. And now to hear these brothers talking this brother Malcolm stuff.
Right. Yes, sir.
Like, what you think happened to this history? Do we think it just vanished?
No.
You still got the history.
You got it. That's right.
You still got these Muhammad Speaks newspapers.
That's
You
right.
still got them lectures.
That's right.
So why, if it was cool for him to say all that about Malcolm then, why ain't it cool for us to say it now?
That's right. That's right.
That's why Brother Secretary John Ali said, the white man and the hypocrites love Malcolm.
That's right. That's right.
Because during the time of the messenger, the hypocrites was talking about Malcolm the way we talk about him today. The white man and the hypocrites. Trying to say he was this great minister. He was the best minister the messenger ever had. That's what they were saying. But the Muslims was trying to counter that. Talking about how much of a hypocrite he was. Because you got Muhammad Speaks newspaper after Muhammad Speaks newspaper talking about Malcolm X. You got another Muhammad Speaks newspaper. This is the June 4, 1971 Muhammad Speaks. It's called Build a Nation of Self. This says the devil uses Malcolm.
That's right.
This was written by the Supreme Captain. Everybody was writing about Malcolm. This is 71.
Right.
Malcolm got killed in 1965. And the same fire they had in 64 when they was talking about Malcolm was the same fire they was talking to all the while praise due to Allah. It ain't changed. They didn't soften it up and be like, oh, it's just a shame what happened to Malcolm. He got what he deserved.
That's right.
He was a hypocrite.
That's right. That's right.
The messenger it was two hypocrites that the messenger used to teach on. And it was Malcolm X and it was his brother Khalil. Them was the two hypocrites that the messenger used to use as an example for everybody to see. These two is my hypocrites.
Right.
Just like Moses had Korah and the other prophets had whoever they had.
That's right.
Malcolm X and Khalil was the two hypocrites that the messenger used to teach on about hypocrites.
That's right. That's right.
We don't even talk about Khalil no more.
That's
I mean,
right.
Muslims you done heard talk about Khalil.
That's right. That's right.
They don't talk about the messenger like he was a messenger of Allah. Because Moses had hypocrites against him too.
That's right.
Malcolm was a hypocrite against the messenger.
That's right.
So we don't talk about no good he did.
Right. Right.
When you hear them talk about Korah in the Bible against Moses, what good they talk about Korah? They don't talk about no good he did. In the message to the black man, the messenger said when you turn hypocrite, all the good that you did before don't count.
That's right.
All praise to Allah.
That's right.
Don't count.
That's right. That's right.
And he said that's why Allah withdraws his guidance from the hypocrite.
That's right.
He said because the hypocrites are successful because they on the right path and Allah is guiding them. That's how you supposed to talk about Malcolm X.
Right.
You ain't supposed to be listening to this oral history of these brothers in New York talking about he the best minister the messenger had. He was a hypocrite.
That's right. That's right.
And the messenger and Allah was guiding him when he was following the message.
That's right.
That's why he was successful.
That's right.
That's why he did so much good. But when he tried to form this mosque in opposition to the messenger, he failed.
That's right. That's right.
That's how you supposed to teach on Malcolm X.
That's right.
He was a hypocrite.
That's right. That's what he was.
But people don't believe in the messenger like they say. Because we like to say, in this new school stuff, we like to say what the messenger said, we supposed to recite our lessons by heart. These brothers love them lessons.
Yeah.
They love to act like you just believe so in your heart what the messenger said about them lessons. What about what he said about the hypocrite?
Right.
Why you don't know by heart what he said about the hypocrite?
Right.
Because you don't believe what he said about the black man's God. You don't believe it.
Right.
That's just a part of the teachings of the messenger that you can use to exalt yourself. So you use them teachings to talk about yourself like you something.
Right.
But when it comes to the teachings of the messenger, like, oh, that stuff he talking about them restrictive laws, nah, ain't with that.
Right.
What's the difference? All the lessons is, Master Farad Muhammad asked the messenger some questions. The messenger answered them based on what he was taught by Master Farad Muhammad. All the lessons is, just like when the messenger talk about a hypocrite, based on what he was taught by Master Farad Muhammad.
Yes, sir.
If you believe what them lessons say, you know that by heart. When Malcolm X come up, you supposed to know by heart what the messenger said about a hypocrite.
That's right.
If you believe that. Because what's the difference? What's the difference in what the messenger said in them lessons and what he said about Malcolm being a hypocrite? What's the difference in what the messenger said in them lessons and what he said in the restrictive law? What's the difference in what he said in them lessons and what he said about us shaving? What's the difference? What's the difference in what he said in them lessons and what he said when he's supposed to be wearing these Afrocentric clothes and they savages?
Right.
Because let's talk about the messenger on these hypocrites. There's so much you can say.
That's right.
So much. I'm telling you.
Right.
Some of this history I ain't even going to be able to get into because I want to talk about what the messenger said about these hypocrites.
Yes, sir.
Because the messenger dotted every I and crossed every T with these hypocrites.
That's right.
And we got to remember, Secretary John Ali article say, the white man and the hypocrites love Malcolm.
That's right.
Always remember that.
That's
When
right.
you listen to these brothers talk this oral history about Malcolm. Let's talk about what the messenger said about a hypocrite. This comes from the May 31st, 1968 Muhammad Speaks newspaper. And this is in 68. The messenger talking about Malcolm and Khalil. Because those were the two hypocrites that he used when he taught. They came a part of the teachings. So when you hear brothers praising Malcolm, I'm telling you, only the white man and the hypocrites love Malcolm.
That's right.
The messenger says, the hypocrites are very much hated ones by Allah, the messenger, and those who follow him.
That's right. That's right.
We can recite our lessons. Talk about how the black man's God. All this talk. Because we ain't never saw Yaqub. But we act like we believe what the messenger said about Yaqub, because we ain't never seen him. We ain't never seen none of that he talking about. All that lesson stuff. All that message to the black man stuff. We don't know. We ain't never seen that. Just like us in this generation, we ain't never seen Malcolm. We don't know him. The messenger knew him.
That's right.
Who met Malcolm? Even them brothers in the day. Even Betty Shabazz. Let's talk about her. She ain't know Malcolm. She met Malcolm after the messenger made him a man that he made.
That's right.
She didn't know Malcolm X.
That's right.
She didn't know Malcolm X when he was in prison. She didn't know Malcolm X when he wrote in his autobiography, when he was writing the messenger letters. Said he couldn't even write a complete sentence. Who knew Malcolm then? None of us. But the messenger did.
That's right. That's right.
So if he say he a hypocrite, who you is to be sitting up here talking about he the best minister the messenger had? The white man and the hypocrites love Malcolm.
Yes, sir. That's right. That's right.
You don't know Malcolm. None of us knew him. The messenger knew him.
Right. Right.
The messenger knew him for years before Betty Shabazz ever knew him.
Yeah, that's right.
Malcolm X used to like white women before he met the messenger. Talk about some history.
Right.
Before the messenger made him a minister. Made him who he was.
That's right.
He used to like white women. He used to be a thief.
Right.
Malcolm didn't go to jail for the cause like Brother James and them did. How you gonna say he the best minister that the messenger had?
That's right.
He went to jail because he was a thief.
That's right.
Brother James went to jail for the cause for 8 years.
Yeah, praise the
All praise due to Allah. What you talking about?
Right. That's right.
Malcolm was the best minister the messenger had.
Right. Right.
You had Brother Clyde X in Baltimore. This brother got shot in the head.
That's right. That's right.
He didn't turn on the messenger. Talking about some Malcolm X. That's why you got to be careful when you listen to that oral history coming out of New York.
That's right.
Because Malcolm X put Islam on the map for them. He ain't put Islam on the map for us. The messenger put Islam on the map for Detroit.
Yes, sir.
Master Farad Muhammad and the messenger. So when they talking about Malcolm X is the best minister the messenger had, I don't know nothing about that.
That's right. That's right.
Some of these brothers that got shot for the messenger, some of these brothers that went to jail for 8 years for the messenger, what you talking about, Malcolm X? Well, for what? Then they say that Malcolm X put the Nation of Islam on the map. He was the one who made the Nation of Islam popular. It's another lie.
That's right. That's
Coming
right.
from the oral history from New York.
Right.
Now let's look at that and look at reality. Now, the Nation of Islam has a national representative. It was a national representative before Malcolm because Malcolm wanted to be the national representative. Now, if he was so smart and he was so wise to put the Nation of Islam on the map, why did he want to be the national representative so bad? That's just like if I want to go to Harvard University. Harvard already on the map.
Yeah.
Because it's on the map, that's why I want to go.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to go because I want to put Harvard on the map.
Right.
I want to go to Harvard because Harvard already on the map.
Right.
The messenger already put the Nation of Islam on the map.
That's right. That's
All
right.
praise due to Allah.
That's right.
That's why he wanted to be the national representative for the messenger. Because he was already on the map.
That's right. That's right.
The white man and the hypocrites love Malcolm.
Yes, they do. That's right.
You always remember that.
That's right.
You always remember that. Now the messenger said, he says the hypocrites are very much hated ones by Allah, the messenger, and his followers.
Yes, sir. That's right.
He says they come saying I believe and go out saying I do not believe. He says they are not satisfied with giving up the truth themselves. They seek to pull others away from the truth And one of their greatest desires is to make people to believe what they are rejecting: Allah, his messages, and his messenger. Start with that. He said Allah, his messages, and his message.
Yes, sir.
That's what all of these hypocrites today want to stop.
That's right.
Because they talk that the most honorable Elijah Muhammad taught. They talk all that, oh, I believe in Master Farah Muhammad. But they don't like or accept the messages of Allah.
Right.
Because the messenger laid it out what a believer is.
That's right.
When we talk about a hypocrite today, we talk about somebody who ain't following one of these big eyes. We redefine what a hypocrite means. The messenger, but how many times you hear brothers teach on hypocrites from what the messenger said about a hypocrite? You don't never hear that. Because the messenger always talked about hypocrites. He talked about hypocrites. He said there was honeycomb with hypocrites. That was in the 50s. He used to have hypocrites all in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. He used to talk about Malcolm them. Talk about Khalil. Had warning to the hypocrites. Right. He always was talking about the hypocrites. Always. And gave you the play-by-play on how you can recognize a hypocrite.
That's right.
And the hypocrite don't always just talk against Allah and the messenger. They speak against his messages.
That's right.
One of the messenger's messages was the restrictive law. I can recite my lessons all day. What's up with the restrictive law?
Right.
Because see, them lessons is what makes us so wise. And what most of the people do who love Malcolm. They like to separate the wisdom of the messenger and put it on Malcolm. That's why they say that Malcolm put the nation on the map. Because if I could take this wisdom that the messenger taught Malcolm and separate it from the messenger, then if I know this wisdom, I'm so wise too. It ain't really the messenger. It ain't really that restrictive law. It ain't really us shaving and all of that. It's because Malcolm was wise. That's what it's about. Malcolm was wise. Malcolm set up all these temples. Malcolm was the one over the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. Malcolm wanted to go to Los Angeles and fight the police for Ronald T. Stokes. Wasn't a messenger. But you see, when Malcolm X's people, when the police tried to come in to stop it, therefore I stopped the police. In New York in 1972, when the police came into the temple, Malcolm was gone.
That's right. That's right.
In 1969, they had the Muhammad Speaks newspaper where the mafia tried to mess with this brother. Just documented history.
That's right.
They had nothing to do with Malcolm.
That's right.
Muslims was fighting the police in the 30s.
They sure. That's right.
They was fighting the police in Milwaukee. They got an incident with the police. The messenger got the incident with the police and the Muhammad message to the black man. He told you the captain's name.
Yeah.
Who died.
Right. Right.
But that oral history coming out of New York. Malcolm X was the one. That's why you got to be careful when you listen to these brothers.
That's right.
You always got to remember, the white man and the hypocrites love Malcolm.
That's right. That's right.
Tell him.
That's right.
Because NOIWC, this website, they got all of them Muhammad Speaks newspapers when, like the 1964 ones. All of them ministers who was writing all of them articles against Malcolm. Go read them. And then listen to what you hear Muslims say today. But let's get back to the message. He says Malcolm's fall should serve as an example to all hypocrites who wish to scandalize and make mockery of at Allah, his messages, and his messenger. That's the message. Malcolm. He said he should be used as an example.
That's right.
When we talk about Malcolm today, we don't say he's an example of a hypocrite. Say it was other ministers who were jealous of him. How you gonna say that? Excuse me. How you gonna say that? The messenger ain't say that.
No, he did.
The messenger knew him.
Right.
We ain't know him. He said that Malcolm's fall should serve as an example to all hypocrites who wish to scandalize and make mockery at Allah, his messages, and his messenger. He says also my brother Khalil's fall serves as a warning to the wistful and proud leaders who want to take upon themselves the honor of the messenger of Allah without being chosen by Allah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
He didn't say being chosen by me. A lot of these, the white man and the hypocrites love Malcolm ministers.
That's right.
They try to make you think the messenger chose me. That's why they don't talk about the hypocrites from what the messenger taught about a hypocrite. That's why all of these NOI archives don't trust them either. They put out Muhammad Speaks newspapers based on this stuff we doing today. They don't just put them out. No, they put them out based on what we doing today to make us think that what we doing today is right. They don't put out that stuff on them hypocrites. They don't do that. No, they want to hide them.
Right.
You know, keep them in the background.
Right.
We'll put out all this do-for-self stuff. You know, we'll put out this stuff about the firearms and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But not no teachings.
Right.
When the messenger talked about a hypocrite, we ain't going to put them out. We'll keep them on the side. We ain't going to put out the ministers who was talking against Malcolm X and other hypocrites, because Malcolm wasn't the only one.
That's right.
Malcolm wasn't the only one.
That's right.
The messenger talked about how, in his time, he said hypocrites used to could get away with being a hypocrite.
Yeah.
But he said that now, since Allah with him, hypocrites get it almost immediately.
All praise to Allah.
All praise to Allah.
That's right. That's right.
So you used to have people who used to lead the nation of Islam and turn hypocrite against the messenger and get killed. They used to always blame it on the Muslims because of what the messenger said. Always blame it on the Muslims. But the Muslims had to come and say, no, we ain't do that. No, we ain't do that. That's why it's good to have these Muhammad Speaks newspapers. There's a lot of hypocrites. Malcolm wasn't the only one.
That's right.
They documented.
That's right.
And every time one of them would get killed, they will always try to blame it on the Muslims.
That's right.
And the Muslims will be in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper telling everybody, we don't kill hypocrites. We leave them to Allah.
That's right. That's right.
That's the facts
That's right.
on the hypocrites. So, the messenger says, the hypocrites are said in verse 143 to be those who are wavering between this and that, belonging neither to these nor those. He says, this is true. The hypocrite goes out claiming that he is with both parties. He shows a false belief and friendship to both sides. He says when a believer comes in and says that he believes and then goes out saying he disbelieves, then he lied at first and he lies going out. This is why a hypocrite cannot be accepted by anyone as being sincere. He says, after you have accepted the truth and declared it to be the truth, if you who come over to follow me to Allah turn your backs on the truth, we have it in black and white that you declare yourself to be a believer in Allah and his messages and messenger. In fact, you declare that you believe as the messenger believes. We got it in black and white.
Right.
So all them hypocrites who left the nation of Islam and formed their own little group start talking against the messenger's messages.
Right.
Not just speaking against Allah, Master Farah Muhammad. Not just speaking against the messenger. Because most times they speak pretty, I used to be a Muslim. All praise is due to Allah, the Most High, Elijah Muhammad, all that.
Right.
Saying my messages.
Right. Right.
Messages.
Right.
Restrictive laws. Shaving.
Right.
Being in the house at night before dark. All of that. That's his messages.
You're right.
But they leave speaking against that. Like, we don't do no restrictive law. We don't pray. You know what I'm saying? I found out something different. I do something different than that. Messenger talked on them hypocrites. This ain't my words. This is what the messenger said. He talked about hypocrites. He said Allah, his messenger, and his messages. So whenever you hear a brother speaking against anything that the messenger taught, and he was a Muslim, like they say, you better be careful. You might be following a hypocrite.
That's right.
All praise due to Allah.
That's right.
Because the messenger spelled it out.
Yes, sir.
Ain't no excuse.
Yes, sir.
You got all these Muhammad Speaks newspapers online. Ain't no excuse for nobody. You can identify a hypocrite because the messenger made it plain about what a hypocrite was.
That's right.
Allah, his messenger, and his messages. When brothers come to the nation of Islam, they write their Savior's letter, saying that they believe in Allah and the messenger. We got it in black and white.
Right. That's right.
That's what you said. But then you go out saying, oh, well, I ain't feeling them restrictive laws. I ain't feeling praying. I ain't feeling all that wearing suits and bow ties and all that kind of stuff. But I love the message, though.
Right.
Line the message. He was my best friend. I love him. No, it don't work like that because the messenger spelled it out.
That's right.
He says, then he turns his back and calls Allah, his religion, and the messenger who preaches that religion a lie. So he becomes the most hated person by Allah. This is why Allah says that he will find no guide. He said, this is why Allah says that he will not guide such a one, but to the path of hell to abide in it. Because we can claim that Malcolm was so wise. We can say he was so wise and this brother knew all this, but when he set up that mosque in opposition to the messenger, and this is how Muslims used to talk about him. When he set up that mosque in opposition to the messenger, what happened? He failed.
That's right.
When him and his people threatened to assassinate the messenger, and them old school FOI came out there. Them old school FOI heard somebody say he with Malcolm X. Old school FOI got on him.
That's right.
Old school FOI. What happened with Malcolm? Malcolm was talking, they say, that Malcolm was mad because the messenger didn't want to go to Los Angeles to fight the police.
Right.
You know, tough Malcolm. What happened when these FOI came? These brothers wasn't even armed. Police in New York and Los Angeles was armed.
Right. That's right.
But that oral history you get out of New York, them brothers be talking about Malcolm X was mad because he wanted to go and fight the police, and the messenger was a chicken. You know, he wasn't as tough as Malcolm X. But what happened with Malcolm X's followers? It was documented. What happened when them unarmed brothers got a hold to him? So what you about to do to the police in Los Angeles? You should have listened to the messenger. He know what he talking about.
That's right.
You ain't no tough guy. And that's how Muslims used to talk about Malcolm. But let's go a little bit further with this brother, Brother Lewis X. Because not only did they talk about Malcolm X, they used to talk about them sisters too. These wives, messengers. That's why they say the white man and the hypocrites love Malcolm X. The hypocrites. Because all this stuff that you be saying is documented. This is in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. And this is in his same December 4th, 1964 Muhammad. Let's listen to what this brother said. Remember now, you can go on YouTube and listen to this oral history he gave and talking about what really happened. But you got documented history. The documented history trump all that oral stuff. Because oral history is pretty much opinion. Documented history is people writing the stuff down as it's happening.
Right. Okay.
That's what document. The Muhammad Speaks newspaper, which is this. The December 4th, 1964 Muhammad Speaks newspaper is the documented history on these sisters. Not this oral history on what really happened that he talking on YouTube. This brother said, in this section of this Muhammad Speaks newspaper is called Malcolm Uses Women. It says, just as Muslimah. I ain't never heard of Muslim. But this supposed to be somebody who was in the Holy Quran. This is how well he was ripping Malcolm X apart in this stuff he was talking about. He talking about prophets we ain't never heard of. That's what he was doing. He said, just as Muslimah went around getting next to the women he once had strength to use for sweethearts, Malcolm has done the same with Lucille Rosary and Evelyn Williams.
Okay.
Muslims was different. He's saying their name.
Right. Right.
Muslims was different, brother. I'm telling you. When you read this history, you be like,
Right.
brothers was raw.
Right.
They saying them sisters first and last name.
Right. Right.
He says he would visit Chicago several days in advance of making an appearance there in order to call, converse, and loll around with Evelyn Williams planning Muhammad's overthrow. That's what he said. Say Evelyn and Lucille, that Malcolm used to go to Chicago conversing with them to plan the messenger's overthrow.
Okay.
That's what them sisters was when the messenger was alive. This is what he said. Then he said he tried to make her his special agent in getting other sisters to aid her and Lucille. Other sisters. Because it wasn't just Evelyn and Lucille. These wives that he's saying now.
Okay.
That's why, once again, the white man and the hypocrites love Malcolm.
That's right.
Always remember that.
That's right. That's right.
He said Malcolm made several calls to other sisters whom he thought were weak enough to side with him, but without avail. He writes from Mecca and sends greetings and messages from Egypt and other places to Muslim women in the mosque, whom he thinks are weak with Muhammad and his leadership. So he's saying that Malcolm used to even write sisters in the temple, trying to get them to go against the message. They weren't saying that these sisters was the messenger's wives. They weren't saying that. They were saying that Malcolm is a hypocrite. He using these sisters to try to overthrow the message. That's what Muslims were saying when the messenger was alive. Stuff is documented. All this stuff we try to say now ain't none of this. This is oral history. The stuff we making up. All this love we got for Malcolm. Because we ain't even started talking about the real stuff yet. We're going to get to that later. He says he tries to use them, but most of them are not so weak, since the manifestation of Allah's backing Muhammad's mission, that they will agree to cast themselves down from the respect of the Muslims and Messenger Muhammad by following such an open and defeated hypocrite as Malcolm. That's what he said. Now, how now can you bring these same sisters that you once said that Malcolm used to overthrow the message? Now you bring them on stage talking about they the wives of the message.
Right.
That's why when you had these Nation of Islam archivists, they don't be putting these papers out. This was on the NOIWC, and this is a runoff copy of the paper. Somebody got the official copy. Ain't nobody putting that out. Let's go to some more stuff. It says to follow Malcolm is to be doomed.
Right.
This how Muslims used to talk about Malcolm in the presence of them old school FOI.
Okay.
Let's remember that.
Yeah.
Because no matter what we say today, the history of what brothers was saying and what Muslims was doing is documented.
That's right.
I just want to keep making that plain.
That's right.
This brother said, the die is set, and Malcolm should not escape after such evil, foolish talk about his benefactor Elijah Muhammad and trying to rob him of the divine glory which Allah has bestowed upon him. Such a man as Malcolm is worthy of death.
That's right.
Remember now.
That's right.
You can say that in the new school Nation of Islam. Brothers will be listening like, oh, that's some strong stuff to say. But you got to remember who he was saying it to back then.
That's right. That's right.
He was saying it to them old school FOI.
Yeah.
Them FOI that the mafia said.
Yeah.
And caution they people say, no,
Right.
no, you better leave them alone.
That's right. That's
He's saying in front of these type of brothers that Malcolm X is worthy of death. That's what we got to remember.
Yeah.
All this tiptoe to the tulip stuff we be talking.
Yeah.
He was saying it in front of them kind of brothers.
Yeah.
He said Malcolm is worthy of death and would have met with death if it had not been for Muhammad's confidence in Allah for victory over the enemies. Let's just use an example.
Right.
Let's say if I say, you know what? I sure love to have me a bean pie. I just said that. Let's just say, I just said it.
Right.
And then it's a bean pie out there. I just said I ain't tell nobody specific. I just said, hey, I want a bean pie.
Right.
Just keep that in mind when you listen to the stuff they were saying.
Right.
Because he said that the Whiteman and the hypocrites love Malcolm.
Yes, they do. That's right. That's right. Yes, they do.
Malcolm was talking against the messenger of Allah.
Right. That's right.
That's who he was talking against.
That's right.
The messenger talked about, he said that death is too good for Malcolm. Let's read that.
Yes, sir.
Let's read that in our closing. Let's read what the messenger said about Malcolm.
Right. Yes, sir.
What is that? Let me get it.
Yes, yes, sir.
Let's read what the messenger said about Malcolm X.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to find it.
Time.
Here we go.
Yes, sir.
Messenger said it called Malcolm X his greatest hypocrite. Let's read what the messenger said about Malcolm.
Right.
The messenger says, he says, as you see today, Malcolm Little and his followers are the greatest hypocrites that we have ever witnessed in our work for the past 33 years. He says he is so jealous of the messengership that Allah has given to me that he wishes with his sharp, poisoned tongue to poison the minds of the nations of the earth against me. Then he goes on to say, he says, the hypocrite is certainly a test for the weak of my followers. He says, with the help of Allah. It's the message. Saying that to them old school brothers.
Yeah.
He said, with the help of Allah. He said, Malcolm X's craving for leadership, as Korah's craving for leadership of Moses, will sooner or later meet with the same fate Korah's craving. He said, with the help of Allah.
Right. Yes, sir.
So he ain't acting like he gonna be hurt if something happened to Malcolm.
No.
This the message.
That's right.
Then he goes on to say, he says, though death is too good for Malcolm. This is what the message is saying in public. It's documented. He said death is too good for this brother. He says death is too good for Malcolm and those who are with him. It is a pity he did not live in the days of Moses and Muhammad of 1400 years ago. What he's saying? We got to know a little history on Moses and Prophet Muhammad.
Right.
He said it's a pity that he didn't live in. What was Moses doing to the hypocrites?
Right.
Go read in the book of Numbers. Go read in the book of Exodus what Moses and them was doing to the hypocrites. Go read. He said it's a pity he wasn't born in.
Right.
Go read. Go listen to what he said about Prophet Muhammad when he talked about that 17-year-old boy cutting the tongues out the people's mouth.
Right. Yes, sir.
That's what the messenger said about Malcolm. Then he goes on to say, it is a pity he did not live in the days of Moses and Muhammad of 1400 years ago. Allah will give me no credit for killing hypocrites, for he desires to beat them into submission to follow him whom they have rejected. I leave them to Allah. So he ain't telling no brother to kill Malcolm.
That's right.
He didn't say that.
That's right.
He didn't say, brothers, go out there and kill Malcolm. But when Malcolm X attacked the Muslims, when Malcolm X threatened the life of the messenger, what you think they was doing then? When the messenger said that death is too good for Malcolm, he said it's a pity that he was not around during Moses and Prophet Muhammad's time. He telling it to them old school brothers. So what you think they did when they saw Malcolm's follower? The history documented. They different from us. That's all I'm going to say. They different from us.
Right.
Well, brothers and sisters, we don't want to prolong the time. So I'll leave you as I came in the nation of Islam's greeting words of peace of Assalamu alaikum.
All praise due to Allah. All praise due to Allah. Yes, sir.
All right. Brothers and sisters, we rise for prayer. In the name of Allah, the beneficent, the merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the beneficent, the merciful. So, Master's day of judgment in which we now live, the alone do we serve, and the alone seek for thine help and aid. O Allah, please guide us on the right path of those upon whom thou bestow thy favors, not on the path of those upon whom thy wrath is brought down, nor those who go astray if they heard thy teachings. Say he, Allah is one God. Allah is he of whom nothing is independent, but upon whom we all depend. He begetteth not, nor is he begotten, there is none like him. And I bear witness that none is there to be served, worship, or praise besides Allah, who came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad. And I bear witness that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is our true servant and last apostle. Ameen. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us not to do anything to anyone that wouldn't have done it to ourselves and treat everybody right, even the devil. Assalamu alaikum.
Thanks now.